So welcome back to the next video and where we are going to analyze the HARPEG. So as I said before, the fixed systems, which are these two, are are heavily based on government intervention, whether they put more dollars from their reserves or they change their interest rate or other things that we are going to analyze in the next class. So now let's analyze the most extreme version, the HARPEG. I already gave you a few hints in the last video where I explained that an example of a HARPEG is like in the case of Argentina when they fix the rate 1-to-1, or the dollarization where they literally exchange their own currency for the dollar. So now let me explain you the three concepts that we are going to use to analyze exchange rate systems, because so far we don't know which one is good for a particular context and which one is bad. So we need to use these three concepts to analyze each exchange rate system. So I will start with stability, and this stability is price stability, right? So it's the stability of the price of the exchange of the foreign currency. Sorry. So let me draw a graph in here, like a very small graph, where we have time and the price. In this case, because we are analyzing the case of the Argentinian peso, this is the price of $1. So let's assume that we have a HARPEG. So in the case of the HARPEG, the stability of the price will look like this. All the time, it will stay the same. It doesn't look like, like a flat line, but in mine it's flat. So the price stays, oh, now it's even worse. So the price stays the same. It doesn't change. It's always $1, sorry, 1 peso per dollar all the time because the government decided to fix it, right? This is price stability, the first concept that we need to analyze. So in the case of the HARPEG, I will say, this is what we have in here, that it has price stability because it's always the same. It's perfect stability. It never changes. It's 1-to-1 or it's 10-to-1, whatever they said it, but it's always the same. So it has price stability. Let's move to the next concept that we need to analyze. The next one is policy independence. Let's see if this system has this characteristic. So policy independence. Policy independence means that the country has the is independent to decide what they want to do with their own policies. And what do I mean with policies? I just gave you two examples in the last video, the examples of policy intervention or or policies that are aimed to manipulate the exchange rate. So I told you that in the HARPEG systems, it is necessary to maintain the fixed rate by putting more dollars in the market. That is a policy. That's a policy of putting reserves in the market. And in the case of the fixed system, in the case of the HARPEG, sorry, in the case of the HARPEG, countries are not independent of that. Why they are not independent? Because the most important thing is to maintain the price, right? So no matter what happens, they need to maintain their price. So in the case that there is like some pressure where the price will go up, they need to put dollars in the market in that second to avoid that rise on the price, or they need to increase the interest rate to avoid that increase on the price. It is always mandatory to act and intervene. So they don't have policy independence because they are not independent. They or their policies are dependent on the price. If the price changes, then uh, you need to do something. So we are concluding that in the HARPEG, countries are not independent from their policies because all their policies are oriented to maintain the price, right? We will see the example of the free float where they are totally independent, and maybe you will become you will understand it even better, or this will become even clearer for you. Don't worry about it. And now let's continue to the last characteristic, which is free currency flow. And what does this mean? Free currency flow is when it is possible to buy or sell foreign currency anywhere freely. Like, for instance, I will give you an example. In Mexico, it's very easy to buy or sell dollars, at least if you are not buying like $1 million or something like that. But if you are buying 100, 200, 1,000, it is very easy to buy it. You can go to a bank and you can just pay and that's it. It's very easy. That's why we have free currency flow. That's what it means. In some countries, like I will give you another example. In in China, it's very difficult to buy dollars or foreign currencies. It's very, very difficult that you have to have special permission, you have to pay some fees. Another example is in Venezuela, it is illegal to buy dollars, for example, you need to have a very special permission and there is a black market for dollars. In those countries, free currency flow doesn't exist, like Venezuela or China. In Mexico, it exists because it's very easy. In the US, it's very easy to buy foreign currency, euros, whatever, right? So what about the hard peg? If a country adopts a hard peg, free currency flow, it's something that they have. And why do they have free currency flow? Well, because that's why they want to show off. Like in the case of Argentina, that's what they wanted to show off. They at some point in 2000 or 1999, they were saying like you can get a loan in pesos or dollar, whatever you choose. It's the same. You can buy in dollar or whatever because it's one to one, so you can buy whenever, sell whatever in dollars or pesos. It's the same. That's what they want to show off. In the case of a dollarized country like Ecuador, it's even easier, right? Because the exchange, the foreign currency, sorry, the foreign currency, it's even in your pocket. You have dollars in your pocket, so free currency flow is of course a yes. So in the end, the hard peg, the example that I'm giving you is about Ecuador or Argentina, where the price is always the same. And now let's analyze the advantages and disadvantages. So the hard peg sounds like a good idea, especially the dollarization when the country has failed a lot in their own policies, because this is what you sacrifice. You're sacrificing your policies in order to achieve stability and free currency flow. So you are giving up all your policies. Like imagine that you have a policy to reduce poverty, but then there is something in the world that is pushing your currency or whatever. So you have to forget about poverty and then focus on stability. That's the sacrifice that you are doing. So sometimes it's a good idea to think about dollarization if the country is not doing well in their own policies. Like that's the case of Ecuador. In also like in 2000s, Ecuador was not doing well. They have been doing well for like 50 years. They're having crisis after crisis after crisis. So at one point they say like, you know what, we are not that good at managing our own policies. Why don't we sacrifice our policies and then that will give us a stability and free currency flow. So what they did was like have a deal with the US and the US controls all their policies. Literally they control all their policies, but they have perfect stability and they have free currency flow, and that has helped a lot to Ecuador. Again, it's open to criticisms and debate. There are good things, bad things, as anything in the world, but I think that it has worked better than in other countries, as in the case of Argentina. When Argentina decided to do this hard peg with the dollar, it literally didn't make any sense. And why is that? Well, first, because uh, they will need to sacrifice a lot their own policies. They will literally sacrifice all of their reserves to maintain that one-to-one exchange rate. And the worst thing is that Argentina didn't need that. It wasn't worthless. Like that one-to-one rate wasn't good for the economy or anything. It was, I don't know, just a political thing, I would say, and they had to sacrifice a lot. And what happened later on was that they didn't have enough resources, enough reserves to maintain this. And then one day, I think it was a Friday, and then they said, you know what? The price of the dollar is not one, it's actually five. I think they say five. And then later on, and then on Monday, they say, oh no, it was actually eight. So imagine 800% depreciation of your currency. That's catastrophic. Here in Mexico, we used to have a hard peg from around the 60s until 94. So we used to have something like this, and it was also terrible for the economy. We used to be like that every 6 years. They had to recalculate whatever the exchange rate they thought was right. And every 6 years, the price of the dollar increased a lot. We call that devaluation, and we're going to talk about that later. So This is example of the HARPEG is the most extreme version of a fixed system. You get stability on the price because it's perfect, and you also have recurrency flow, but you sacrifice something extremely important, which is policy independence. I gave you the example of Ecuador and Argentina, and the advantages of this system is that if you are doing extremely bad in your own economy, then maybe sacrificing independence doesn't sound that bad. But if you are not doing that bad, if you don't need perfect stability, it sounds like a bad idea. So in general terms, this system sounds like a bad idea in normal circumstances. It works well in case of emergencies or things like that after huge crisis. That's more or less the summary of the hard pick. I hope that you understand, and I will continue with the soft pick in the next video.